Wine sits at the bar, her fiancé Jungkook beside her, and a glass of scotch in her hand. She took a sip while the atmosphere was tense. Jungkook barely acknowledges her presence. His attention focused on his phone. Wine, feeling ignored, begins to drink more than usual, hoping to drown onto her frustration. The dimly lit bar buzzes with the chatter of patrons, the clink of glasses, and the low hum of music. But amidst the noise, Wine feels isolated, a sense of loneliness creeping in as she watches Jungkook's indifference. She tries to engage him in conversation, but her attempts are met with no responses or just a nod. Jungkook's disinterest cuts deep, feeling her frustration and driving her to drink more than she intended. She was rethinking why did she even come here. They both were forced by their parents to go on a date before marriage, and Jungkook asked her where did she want to go. She asked him to go to a bar. A dinner with the boring mafia Jungkook would make her crawl out of the place with awkwardness. That's why she just decided to drink. And being a silent, not giving a damn fiance he is, he couldn't refuse because he doesn't care. He will just kill time and go home. Frustrated as she was, she gulped another glass of alcohol. As the night wears on, Wine tries to start a conversation, even when she didn't want to anymore, her words slurring as the alcohol takes hold of her. Jungkook, she moaned and threw her head on his shoulder. Eyes and attention drifted towards her from the phone. Thinking she's just being clingy, he pulls away, his expressions hardening, not knowing she is drunk. Frustrated and hurt, Wine decides to drown her sorrows in another drink, ordering a shot of whiskey and downing it in one gulp. The burning sensation in her throat momentarily distracts her from the pain of Jungkook's rejection. But as the alcohol begins to cloud her judgment, Wine's behavior becomes increasingly strange. She started to laugh loudly, drawing stares from everyone in the bar and him. Jungkook watches her with a mixture of annoyance and concern, his brows furrowing as he realizes just how drunk she has become. He considers cutting her off, but something stops him, a flicker of guilt, knowing he is the reason for her current state. He gets closer to her, not too much, but enough for her to hear him amidst the loud music. Are you okay, Vine? His voice loud but soft, his tone concerning. She immediately looked up and smiled, then looked at her right, his eyes staring at her with genuine concern. She smiled more widely. I'm fine. She slurs, her words barely audible, her eyes glassy with alcohol. Jungkook sighs, knowing she is anything but fine. He reaches out to brush a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle against her skin. You shouldn't drink so much, he says, his concern for her evident in his tone. Vine giggles, leaning onto his shoulder. I know, she admits, her words barely audible. He sighs again but stayed still. This time he didn't pull off his shoulder and let her rest there. He doesn't like her, or so he thinks, but at least he has respect for her. And knowing that she is his responsibility now, the least he can do is offer a shoulder. He looks at her, his heart softening when he took a glance of her from so close for the first time. He couldn't stop looking. After minutes, he looked away feeling warm, gulping the whole glass of scotch at once. thinking what he is even doing, what has gotten into him. He didn't sign up for this. He was having a conflict with himself that she spoke, making him come out of his thoughts and look at her. Whine. I'm sorry if I feel like a burden. You know it's not my fault, but I still just wanted your attention. Jungkook, you didn't have to get drunk for that, he said softly. Whine. I know, but you weren't even looking at me. I'm here now, aren't I? Let's just get you home. His tone straight, trying to hide his emotions from her, but especially from himself. Why do you always have to be so distant, Jungkook? Jungkook. I have my reasons, Whine. You know that. Making a pout, she got up from his shoulder, frustrated. She looked ahead and wanted to gulp down another glass. Yeah, well, sometimes your reasons suck. Saying that, she picked up the glass to drink, but he held her hand. Taking the glass from her hand, he looked at her. You can't drink anymore. Let's go home. He got up and gestured for her to get up as well. But she threw her head hard on the counter. His instincts fast and observing, he immediately put a hand under her head before she could crash onto the counter. Her eyes were closed and she whispered, I'm cold. He looked at her bare arms that were shivering and slowly drew back his hand, which was under her head. He took off his jacket and covered her with it. She immediately held it close while her eyes were still closed. He let her rest there a few minutes, as he took the time to glance at her, as he never had the chance to do it up close till now. They talked to each other a few times, but he never had the chance to stare at her for long. But now that he was doing so, he couldn't stop. He wasn't aware of the beauty he had beside her all the time till now. Wine. Do you ever think about us, Jungkook? She babbled in her sleep while her eyes were still closed. He came into senses and cleared his throat as he looked away. What do you mean? He asked, resilience clearly evident in his voice. Fine. Like where we're headed, if we even have a future together. Or are we just going to leave each other after our parents die? His answer would have been different had he not had a close look of her seconds ago. His answer would have been different if he hadn't come with her today. But as of now, he himself doesn't know anymore. But he's certain about one thing at least. Jungkook, I don't know about our future, even if we have one or not. But we're not going to leave each other. Even if we don't love each other, even if we start hating each other because of certain things, I won't leave you. He said the last line and looked at her. She heard the last line and opened her eyes. Their eyes met in the most intense eye contact they had till now. Her hazel eyes locked with the dark ones, and the connection as formed. He decided he wouldn't let her go now. Even if she wants to, he will keep bringing her back. He smiled during their eye lock, and before he could process, his lips were taken by hers. She crashed her mouth into his, and it didn't take him long to think about it. He went with the flow and kissed her back. The connection which was formed became unbreakable now. This kiss was a testament that she is his now, It's not a random thing for him to kiss girls, as he prioritizes his work more than anything else. His parents forced him to marry her. Otherwise, they were afraid he might marry his work. But now that he kissed her, he felt a kind of emotion he never felt. The love, the warmth, the softness, all he felt in that one kiss. It was getting deep and deep, and somehow he liked it. After a few seconds, he put a hand on her head and pulled her closer. He deepened the kiss and kept doing it until he was out of breath. He broke it down and breathed heavily, looking at her. He smiled and immediately picked her up in his arms. Jungkook, time to go home, baby. Vine smiled and immediately slept in his embrace. He looked at her innocent face, smiled and kissed her forehead. She held him close as he found solace in her touch, and especially that kiss. He decided to pay more attention towards her from now on, as he took her towards his car to finally go home. Their parents were finally successful when they forced them to go on a date.